Welcome back to the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Baines, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to author Elmer Fuller. Elmer is a retired minister turned writer who has spent years weaving faith-friendly historical fiction. His debut novel, Kate's Crucible, a Bleeding Kansas story, transports readers to 1855 Kansas, where faith, conviction, and political turmoil collide. In our conversation, Elmer shares how his father's Depression-era stories sparked his own writing, what it means to write with faith at the core, and how Christian fiction can serve as both storytelling and discipleship. If you've ever wondered how history, faith, and imagination come together on the page, you won't want to miss this episode. Here we go. I'd like you to join me in welcoming Elmer Fuller. We're happy to have you with us today, Elmer. Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure thing, Mike. I'm a retired person, have had a couple of careers, and then decided to pursue writing. And so I am right now waiting for my first published work to come out on September the 23rd.
Oh, so we're close. That'll be your first book.
The first one that's published, yes. So
it's kind of an exciting time, isn't it?
It is. It's kind of unreal. I'm like, is this really happening? Because I started doing writing about 5 years ago, and started in 2020, and really have learned a lot and put a lot of time and energy into it. So it's kind of fun to see that coming to fruition.
Certainly. So where do you live, Elmer?
I live in the Kansas City metro.
So have you always lived in the metro Kansas City area?
No, I was born not too far away from here, but grew up in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Went to college in Missouri, and then graduate school in Ohio, and lived in Alaska, Michigan, back in Missouri, and then back to Kansas. So.
Well, it almost sounds like you had a job with the federal government there.
No job with the government.
Well, I've been around the states with the federal government, so that's why I said that. So, have you found a special place where you like to just kind of go and download?
There are different places. For me, there are two things that I can do that kind of restart the juices. One is just getting out outside somewhere. I'd rather go see the mountains than go to a city. And so if I can get out, that helps. And other times, just a good long drive just lets your, unless it's bad traffic, it just lets your mind kind of shift, relax, and you can kind of work on ideas and think through some things.
Yeah. A question I like to ask, and if you've seen the podcast, you know what's coming. It would be, what are your three favorite songs?
My three favorite songs, that's really tough. I am probably, I was never, even when I was in high school, I was not into music the way a lot of teenagers are. I think I don't know if I know the titles of them. I Can Only Imagine is one of them.
Yeah.
I really like that song. It seems like every time Amazing Grace is one that everybody knows and can connect with, and I just. A lot of the different worship songs, I haven't come up with a number three yet. So
that's all right. Numbers 1 and 2 certainly touch my heart when I hear them.
Well, it's some of those songs are it's like, okay, and I'll hear another one sometime and it's like, ooh, that is really good. So.
Yeah. Would we have any better luck with your 3 favorite movies?
My favorite movie would be the Return of the King, which is the last one of the Tolkien trilogy. So that was probably my favorite. I liked all of the movies, but that one was one that was, I remember sitting in there and a couple of scenes, I actually yelled in the theater. It's like, yes! So it's like, oh, okay. So I enjoy good stories. So that would probably be one of my favorite movies. And, I also enjoyed The Hobbit, but it wasn't not as good. So, there's other movies I've seen and enjoy, but the ones I go back and watch, probably some TV series are more my thing than movies. But, to me, if I go back and want to see it again, that's a good one. And so that, every now and then it's like, okay, I'll break out the Lord of the Rings trilogy and watch my way through it.
Well, I think those, well, I can't say what specifically it says about a person, but it kind of helps us to draw a kinship. If we understand the music and the movies you like, we could say, yeah, I can fit in with that guy. If you don't mind, would you tell us about your walk with Christ?
So I made a decision to follow Jesus when I was about the summer between my 6th and 7th grade. So we had moved. I had gone to, and a family invited my family to church, and it was somebody my dad knew through his work, and so we went. They were in the same school district, and so we went to church with them. And the church was saying, "Hey, we've got summer camps. We're sending kids to summer camp. You want to go to summer camp?" And so I went to summer camp, and during that time at summer camp, I remember being convicted about my need for Jesus, and made a decision. And they called my folks after that chapel service that evening. And as the Lord worked it out, the youth minister from the church had actually been calling that evening at my parents' house, and my younger brother and my older sister both decided they wanted to follow Christ. So he said, let's all get baptized on Sunday together.
Oh my.
And when we left the pew on Sunday, my dad went too. And so my mother and older brother had already made decisions for Christ. So that was kind of the way it happened. And since then it's for 18 years. I went to a Christian college and got a degree in Christian ministry, was in ministry for 18 years, helped start a little church, then made a change and went into the corporate world and did IT things. But Christ is kind of my, that's my purpose, and that's what I'm about.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing it with us. It sounds like the Fuller family is all in.
Yes.
That's great. What then sparked your calling to write Christian fiction?
Well, my dad grew up, and he grew up in a dysfunctional family, and he would tell stories of some of the things that he experienced, particularly between the ages of 5 and 10. And this was down in the hills of Arkansas, and he would tell stories, and but he didn't tell this, he told the stories from the perspective of getting a laugh, of enjoying them. And when I was an adult, he would get together with his sister or sometimes his mother, and they get to reminiscing, and I began to realize there was a lot more going on than some of these stories he talked about, because he'd talk about catching a buzzard or other things that they did. I always had this book. I had this idea that, okay, one day I'm going to retire. I've got to write some of this stuff down somehow in a way, and make a story out of it. And that was, the first attempt I made at writing a novel. And it's still sitting somewhere. Maybe someday I'll dust it off and try again. But a lot of times what happens with an author is it takes 2 or 3 or 4 books before you really get the hang of it. So that's why it's not published today, but it's still the reason I got started writing and talking about stories. And so what I want to do is I want to craft stories of people going through some important events. So for my dad, that was the Depression and the Depression era. And the book, every one of my books has some kind of a social conflict going on at the time. And so I want to know, how do people react to this? What do they do? And I also want to write a story that has a character who they have to deal with something internally. They have to change their mind. They have to learn something. I don't want to just have a guy meets girl kind of a book. There needs to be more to it than that. So I want to craft that kind of a story.
Yeah, I wonder, did you try to publish that first work?
I have not. I queried that to different agents,
Mm-hmm.
and the challenge I found was that I remember one of them particularly saying, I've got a red light, green light thing, and I look at 2 things. I look at the story, and I think your story is a green light. I think you can make a good story out of it.
Yeah.
But the market is the other thing, and she just didn't see the market for it. So that's kind of the and I think I can write it better anyway. So it kind of just has gone back onto the shelf.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if a new author that comes from any walk of life, that's maybe not a journalist or someone that's been writing other things, but when someone that hasn't written and says, I think I'll write a book, and they write one and they look at it and say, no one would ever read this because they wrote it. And we often are our own worst critic. And what you're telling me is a person says, I don't know that we could make money on this. And
I think authors have one of 2 things that we do. We either think our writing is much better than it is, or we think it's far worse, and we keep tweaking it and changing it, and so you gotta. And I think one of the things you have to do is you have to learn what good is, and sometimes that's querying, sometimes that's getting training, going to conferences and things, and learning. And I was amazed because I did a lot of nonfiction writing. I had several nonfiction magazine articles published many years ago, back in the 90s and to 2000. And writing fiction is a totally different thing than writing nonfiction. So, there's some overlap, but the Venn diagram kind of separates quite a ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess my thinking is that if you have a book that you're not going to sit down and improve and make super better, that it's better just to go ahead and do an independent publishing of it and get it out there between the covers for your family, your posterity, rather than it just drift away. And I guess I say that because my sister has several books that she has written but didn't try to publish them, and now she's not sure where they went. And
okay.
her family will never read what she had thought.
Right. Yeah, that's a tragedy. And certainly today, publishing is changing so that the independent author route is the way to go. And actually, that's how I'm publishing now as an indie author.
Yeah.
I kind of looked at some of my stories and thought, okay, I'm an older guy, and when you look at what agents are looking for, and the stories they're looking for, I thought, okay, to me, I wanted to move forward, and you have to be ready. And there are different ways where I kind of said, okay, I think my writing is now ready. And so I've made that choice to go forward as an indie author. And because if you get an agent and your agent secures a contract for a fiction book, it's 2 years at that point before it gets into print. And indie authors can address the market much faster.
And what I've heard is even if you're traditionally published, you might have to take the burden of publicizing your works on yourself.
Yes, a lot of they don't put much into marketing. Exactly. You might as well have more of the royalty.
Yeah.
And as an indie, it's not like I just put my book together. I hire people to edit it. I hire people to do the cover design and things like that. So, it's not, and I've learned so much, and it has been improved by those things. And when I look at the cover, it's like, yeah, I couldn't have done that. So if it was some nonfiction thing, I probably could slap something together that would work, but it's totally different, I think, sometimes when you're trying to capture somebody's emotions with the cover of a novel.
Yeah. Well, in the work that you have coming out, what's the name of this book?
The name is Kate's Crucible. Oh. It's a bleeding Kansas novel, is kind of the subtitle. And Kate Collins is a 19-year-old woman who travels to the Kansas Territory in 1855 to teach school. But nature, romance, and political violence threaten her mission, and she has to re-examine God's will for her life. So that's kind of the idea of Kate's Crucible.
Oh, was there a biblical truth or passage that kind of anchors that book that goes along with Kate's dilemma?
I don't know if there's a specific passage that's the anchor. So a lot of what happens with Kate is she sets out to do something good for God, and she wants to help Kansas become a free state. It's her way to fight abolition. She can't vote. This is the era before women can vote. She can't, she can't do many things, and so she could do this. So she goes to Kansas to teach and at the time there was a immigrant aid society in Boston that was recruiting New Englanders to go to Kansas because there was a race on. Who's going to get enough people in there to vote to be a free state or a slave state? And so she thought, okay, they want to provide, and they were founding towns and bringing in sawmills and doing all kinds of things to make settlement faster and easier. They were organizing trips to get people to come, and so she she goes along, and she comes thinking that she's going to do something, but everything goes wrong, and she can't do what she wants to, and then it makes her question, why God? And I think that's what a lot of people go through. Sometimes we go through some pretty difficult things, and we ask, why God? And so she has, she thinks she knows what God's will for her life is. And it just forces her to re-examine that.
This podcast was founded because there were people looking for books where romance wasn't the central theme, where books that women were asking for books that their husbands could connect with. And there was also single moms concerned about their sons not having a male influence, and was looking for books written from a male perspective that would be good for their son. You have a female protagonist. Do you feel that your book fits those 3 points or objectives?
I think, and I have people who've read the book, and have provided some reviews, and some of them are men, and they have liked the book. I remember one of the guys said, this was he felt like he was in the mind of the character much more, and you get the point of view of 3 characters. It's actually, the main character is Kate, and most of it's her point of view. There are 2 other characters who are men, and they are minor. They're not the major thing. So the book is not a romance, because it's not purely about a guy meeting a woman and all of their attraction and all of their time together leading up to romance. But there is a romantic element to the book, because one of the things that Kate does is she leaves somebody behind in Boston when she comes. And so I don't want to give you too many spoilers, but she's like, I'm going to go teach school. Yeah. So, but I
agree. You don't have to have a dominant male role to meet those 3 criteria I laid out for you.
Well, I wrote this book definitely for a female audience, because women buy more books than men.
They do, yeah.
The book I'm working on now, I'm writing for a male audience, and definitely a male protagonist, and definitely, it's Birth of the Warrior is kind of the working title, and it's set in ancient Israel in the time of Saul, and it's about a young man and his becoming a warrior. It's one of those things where he has to overcome some things in his life. And this is much more one I think that will be interesting to men and male characters.
We hope that books we read somehow sharpens the faith, our faith, as we read it. Will your books kind of hone people's faith?
So my whole point is faith-friendly historical fiction. That's kind of my tagline, that if you go to my website, elmerfuller.com, you will see that as kind of my branding. I produce a newsletter, and it's all about trying to find historical fiction, because people want historical fiction, but I want it to be friendly to their faith. So it's not always that I'm looking for things that will challenge their faith, but I certainly don't want to promote things that, are detrimental to their faith. So I think in the story of Kate, you go on the journey with Kate. You're understanding her point of view. You're seeing what she's wrestling with and how she comes to understand what she should do and what God wants her to do. And I think that is, kind of one of those things that many of us, at some point in our life, we go through a very similar time. So, I think it's not, what should I say? It's subtle. It's woven into the story. So it's not the same as a sermon. And, with application points. There are discussion questions in the book. So if book club or somebody reads it, there's discussion questions at the end that are a little bit more specific to some of that reflection. But that's kind of the way the book was written.
Yeah. See your writing more as a ministry, a mission, or putting a message out?
So, and maybe it's because I had time in ministry. I certainly think it's an expression of my faith, and I want to be following Jesus. I don't know if I'd use the term ministry. It is certainly part of my mission. I'm here to help disciple people. So it's if I can help people read a story, engage with the character, enjoy that time, and maybe it's more seed planting than other things as they see a character in a book, and they kind of understand the emotions they go through and they can identify with.
We are subjected to so much from the world today, and our first reaction to a lot of things have been kind of ingrained in us from what we see in the world, our reaction to this or that. And so I think it's really important that we experience Christian fiction where people react with heavenly thoughts in mind. And I don't know how to counterbalance what the world offers if we don't have Christian authors writing real life, gritty Christian fiction. So in that way, I think we've kind of got a mission that we provide that kind of experience where we see people reacting to some of the same things that we have to react to, but maybe they react in a more positive way, a more Christian way than at least from what I'm personally used to reacting when these things happen.
Right. And the interesting thing about our time is we are in the midst of a civil war of values. We have, and it's all become political. Today, politics is morality, and this is where the moral dialogue is. And the book I wrote, Kate's Crucible, is in a similar time period because it was all about slavery. And that gets wrapped around so many different things, but it was a very important time for the country. But when you think about people who go through that time and some of the things that they go through, they have to make up their minds about what they're going to do about what they believe is right and what they believe is wrong. And I think, today we are in similar places. We sometimes may have made up our mind what's right, but sometimes we need to make up our mind what we're going to do about it.
Yeah. I heard something from our pastor the other day that I thought is very important. If you proclaim a position and you say, I feel, then it's something coming from inside you. You've decided and you feel this. But if you say, I know, then that's based on something from the outside. In other words, you're basing your decision on what the Bible says and not your deceitful heart. And I think oftentimes we need to be alert and aware of where our positions, how we establish them. Is it because I don't want to offend my liberal friend? Or is it because I'm really concerned about my liberal friend because of what I read in the Bible, and so I may offend him? We have decisions that we need to make, and our knee-jerk reaction sometimes tells a story that I'd rather not be true.
I think people are not always aware of how much of their values they catch from our culture.
Definitely.
Versus really are a reasoned position from the moral authority of Scripture.
Exactly. Very well said.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Elmer, in your early on, was there a Christian author that kind of shaped you? Or, for example, I was really shaken the first time I read Frank Peratti's his series of 3 books, and they were just awesome.
That was probably the first time I read Christian fiction that I knew was from a Christian author. Yeah. I read lots of different fiction and books, for many, many years. And that was certainly, it was kind of like a thriller genre, but it had that spiritual side of it.
Yeah.
And that was, I don't remember how old I was when I read that. It was might have been a teenager, or in my 20s. I don't recall, but, it was kind of, different. So as far as Christian fiction, that was probably, it, back then. A lot of the books I was reading by Christian authors weren't fiction in my earlier years. So, C.S. Lewis
Right.
works and things like that. So, and I really didn't even know there was such a thing as, Christian fiction author organizations until I had a friend in college who she had published several things, and when I kind of got to retirement and I said, okay, I need to figure out how to do this. I emailed her and said, hey, and she said, here's some resources to get you started. I knew of resources in the secular world, like Writer's Digest magazine, and they have a whole bunch of books they have on how to be a writer. But this was, she pointed to the American Christian Fiction Writers Organization, and
Right.
and it was like, oh, wow. And now, I'm finding and actually reading more Christian authors now than I did before, because I just didn't know they were there or how to find them.
Yeah. And I hope this podcast helps a little.
Yes.
It's kind of easy to find romance writers, Christian fiction romance writers. I'm hoping that we can elevate the male point of view.
I was going to say, I read a Christian sci-fi. So there are a few Christian sci-fi, and I love sci-fi too. But I'm do a lot of my reading in the historical genre. So I've found some of the authors there, and it's like, okay. And one of the things I've been trying to do is catch up on some of the books, or the books that have won awards, like the Carroll Award or the Christie Award, or some of those kind of things. It's like, I don't know why I didn't know there was a Christie Award. I knew there was a Christie book that's been around for a long time, but it's been a good way to go find some good books.
Is there a verse that kind of keeps recurring in your when you're trying to write, especially maybe if the words don't seem to be coming real easy for you?
No. To me, I haven't struggled a lot with writer's block. There are verses that certainly come to mind, but not necessarily as a part of the writing process. So one of the verses I love one in Ephesians, which talks about that God can do immeasurably more than we can ask or even imagine. And, we just have such a puny idea of who God is sometimes. Yeah. So that's one that's there. So.
Do you feel like there's perhaps a lesson God has taught you or pointed you to something through your writing?
There's all kinds of lessons. For me, the lesson is, God, what do you want me to do? I'm disciples. Writing is not my top priority. Making disciples is. And so for me, if something would happen and I felt that God called me to stop writing, I would. I enjoy writing. To me, it has I enjoy reading, and there's something about writing that's similar but different, and I enjoy it because it's like designing the puzzle. Yeah. It's like you have problem solving you have to do. There's times you have to, you're trying to evoke an emotional response in people, and you're trying to get your readers to connect with your character. So there's challenge to it, and I find it enjoyable, but it's not, to me, it's if God says, I want you to go do something else, I'll go do something else.
Yeah. You mentioned problem solving as you're writing, so it's a puzzle. Have you been, say, in chapter 11, happily writing along, and all of a sudden your character left-hand turn you didn't expect, and you have to go all the way back to chapter 3 and start leaving some breadcrumbs to make this new diversion fit?
So a little of that. I am more of a plotter than a pantser. So, in the writing world, some people, I got an idea and they just start writing. Yeah. I have to, I'm more of an organized brain, and so I have to have a starting point. Me, the place where I have to do that problem solving sometimes is more in the, getting that story idea of what is the story, who are the characters, and then, okay, how do I craft this into a novel? Not just, it can't just float along here. There has to be conflict. There has to be, there's an arc to the story and to the character. And so, what I did on my last book is I kind of got to the point where I had a spreadsheet that listed out all these scenes, and some of them didn't get in the book. Yeah. Some of them do, and sometimes I move them around, and they're not the whole scene. It's just like, okay, here's what's going to happen, and here's what's going to, be the challenge, and here's what my main character of the scene is going to realize, and so something else is going to happen. So it took a little bit of work to do that. I did that much plotting. So there were times when I have the plan and I'm writing along, and you get this idea and your character does something different in the scene you wrote that you didn't anticipate, and it's like, okay, the next. Yeah. And so I've had that kind of thing happen. Sometimes to me that when I'm in chapter back and look at chapter 3, it's not so much because things change. It's sometimes I've written something and I didn't remember what I'd said before. Oh, wait a minute. You start going back through and you realize, oh yeah, no, it's got to be different now. Yeah. That's kind of the thing that happened.
So Kate's Crucible is going to be available the end of this month, you say?
Yes. So order the ebook. It is actually discounted through until the 18th, but on the 23rd is when everything available other than the audiobook. I'm kind of in the process on the audiobook, and hopefully that will come out not too it won't be right here in September.
And the name of the book that you're currently working on?
One is working title is Birth of a Warrior.
Yeah.
So
we'll have to wait on that for a little while longer.
I've lined up an editor, and I need to have it to him by the end of October. So I think it'll come out sometime next spring.
Yeah. Well, it keeps you busy.
Yes, it does.
You mentioned you have, and would you state that again so we can?
Certainly. It's just my name, elmerfuller.com. ELMULLER.com. And yes, you can go there and you can get all the details on Kate's Crucible. A prequel, a short novelette prequel as an ebook. You can get that for free. So look at it. I've got a newsletter for people that I include a short story, a book review, and information on new releases. Promotions, not just from me, but from other authors. Mm-hmm. So it's it's one of those things that people can.
Great. Well, as we close this out, and I've enjoyed this conversation immensely, but as we close this out, is there a message you'd like to
I think as readers of Christian fiction, enjoy good books, recommend good books, but above all,
you can't have any better advice than that, I don't think. Elmer, would you mind if we had a word of prayer?
Go ahead.
Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for the gifts that you've given Christian fiction authors, for Elmer's writing skill and his ability and his imagination, that he's willing to put his faith down on paper so that he can cause them to consider their lives and relationship with you. And we just ask that you bless Elmer, go with him and keep him encouraged and busy. So we just, for being the God that gives all gifts, all wonderful things to his children. We ask these things in your name.
Amen.
Well, Elmer, thank you for taking this time of your day to be with us here on this podcast. And I hope that our podcast will motivate some people to go find people. And I wish you all the best of luck. It'll be to our advantage. That was my conversation with Elmer Fuller, author of Kate's Crucible. I was struck by his commitment to crafting historically rich and spiritually meaningful. His perspective, Christian fiction isn't about preaching, but about weaving truth in stories, is one that resonates deeply. If you'd like to learn more about Elmer's work, head over to elmerfuller.com, where you can find Kate's Crucible, a free prequel novelette, and updates on his upcoming book, Birth of a Warrior. Thank you for joining us here on the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. If today's conversation encouraged or inspired you, a friend, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. And as Elmer reminded us, above follow Jesus. Until next time, keep your heart anchored in faith and your mind open to stories that shape us for the kingdom. This is Mike Baines, out.